The wind drifts low across the quiet fields of Leicestershire. Bare branches whisper against one another, and somewhere beyond the last farmhouse, beyond the reach of lantern light, a hollow in the earth waits. Still, watching. Tonight, as sleep begins to take hold, we journey into the foggy space between folklore and fear. If you're listening under moonlight or nestled in the quiet of your room, feel free to share your setting in the comments. These stories take on new life when we hear where they're being dreamt. This is the tale of Black Annis, pronounced Black Annis, an ancient figure of shadow and soil, a presence said to dwell in the roots of old trees and in the dark spaces beneath forgotten hills. Settle in, breathe deep, and let your thoughts drift into the unknown. Welcome to Fairytales After Dark. Long before stone villages rose from the fields, before chimneys traced smoke into gray skies, the countryside of England belonged to deeper rhythms, the rhythm of hoof and furrow, of frost and thaw, of seed and harvest. Life followed the slow certainty of the land. And the land, in turn, held its own memory. In these old places, stories were not separate from daily life. They grew from it, like moss on stone, like roots through soil. Black Annis was one such story. Not a tale of distant castles or heroic kings, but of hedgerows, of forest edges, of hollow oaks and quiet valleys. A figure shaped not by grandeur, but by the intimate closeness of rural fear. She belonged to the places where light thinned and silence deepened. In the oldest accounts, Black Annis was said to dwell in a great oak tree, its roots twisted into the earth like grasping fingers, its hollow trunk forming a natural chamber, a doorway into shadow. From this hidden refuge, she emerged only after dusk. Her form was described in hushed tones, a tall, thin shape, draped in black, her skin dark as soot, her face long and skull-like, her eyes pale and fixed, catching light where no light should remain. Her arms stretched farther than seemed possible, ending in iron-hard claws, said to be strong enough to tear bark from wood or stone from mortar. But it was her hunger that lingered longest in memory, for Black Annis was said to devour those who strayed too far from safety, especially children, who wandered beyond the edge of firelight or followed curiosity into the woods. She would snatch them from the path, carry them back to her tree, and there, in the quiet hollow, she would consume them, their skins, according to legend, she wore as clothing, not in cruelty, but in concealment to modern ears. Such stories sound brutal, excessive, designed only to frighten, but in their original setting, they served another purpose. In an age before fences, before street lamps, before certainty, the countryside could swallow a child without warning. Dense woods, open wells, hidden ravines, wild animals, and sudden weather. Danger did not announce itself, so stories did. Black Annis became a guardian of boundaries, a reminder that not every shadow was empty, that not every silence was safe. She was not merely a monster, she was the voice of the land, saying, "Do not wander too far." As centuries passed, her story deepened and softened and sharpened, all at once. Some accounts described her as a crone, bent with age, wrapped in rags, sitting quietly in her tree hollow, waiting. Others painted her larger, more bestial, almost inhuman, with glowing eyes and endless reach. Yet beneath these variations, the same figure remained, a solitary presence, bound to the earth, feeding not only on flesh, but on fear, on misstep, on the thin space between safety and danger. Black Annis was rarely seen, but often felt, the hush of the forest. When birds fell silent, the sense of being watched. At twilight, the sudden stillness that crept across open ground. These were said to be her signs. She did not chase, she did not roar, she waited. Her lair, according to legend, lay in the Dane Hills, near the edge of Leicester, where soft earth and ancient roots folded inward, creating natural caverns and hollowed chambers. There, beneath the soil, she was said to sit, clawing slowly at the walls, enlarging her home, deepening the dark. This detail, repeated across generations, suggests something older than fear, a memory of caves, of hidden dwellings, of ancient shelters carved from stone and clay. Some folklorists believe Black Annis may represent the lingering echo of prehistoric cave dwellers, or earth spirits, or forgotten guardians of place, whose names faded, but whose presence remained. In this way, she is not only a figure of horror, but of continuity, a remnant of humanity's earliest relationship with darkness. Across the British Isles, similar figures appear: the Caoch, the Boo Hag, the Black Dog, the Washer at the Ford. All watchers, all boundary keepers, all reminders that land remembers. Black Annis stands among them, a solitary sentinel, rooted deeply in soil and shadow. In later centuries, as Christianity reshaped the cultural landscape, her image darkened. What was once an earth spirit, or a warning tale, became something closer to a demon, a corrupter, a devourer. Church sermons spoke of her as a servant of hell, a creature of sin, lurking where virtue grew weak. Yet even in this form, she retained her ancient role. She still marked the border between safety and danger, between home and wilderness, between the living world and what lay beyond. By the 18th century, Black Annis had become firmly embedded in English nursery lore. Mothers warned their children to behave, or Black Annis would come. Fathers cautioned sons not to roam, or she would carry them away. And so, her story lived on, not as terror, but as instruction, a quiet discipline, passed from voice to voice across candlelit rooms and winter nights. But folklore does not remain still. As villages expanded, as roads lengthened, as forests thinned, the spaces Black Annis once occupied began to vanish. Her tree was felled, her hills reshaped, her caverns filled, yet her presence endured. For some legends do not require location. They require only memory, and memory is stubborn. In later tellings, Black Annis no longer waited solely in hollow trees. She moved freely through hedgerows, along old lanes, across moor and meadow. Sometimes she was said to ride the wind, sometimes to melt into shadow, sometimes to appear only as a fleeting shape, just beyond the corner of the eye, a suggestion, rather than a form. And in these newer accounts, her hunger softened. She became less a devourer and more a watcher, a collector of wayward souls, a quiet force guiding those who wandered too far, not punishing, but correcting. There is something deeply human in this transformation. As societies grew safer, their fears grew subtler. No longer did children vanish into forests, but uncertainty remained. Anxiety, loss, the unease of stepping beyond the known. Black Annis evolved to meet these new shadows. She became not only a monster in the woods, but a presence in the mind. A reminder that even modern worlds contain unknown corners. Now, as night settles around you and your breathing slows, imagine the old countryside once more. Low hills rolling into mist, hedgerows twisting like dark rivers, fields stretching beneath quiet stars. Somewhere among them, a hollow waits, not threatening, not calling, simply present. And in that presence, the story pauses, waiting, listening as the night deepens. Long before names, before roads, before villages stitched light into the dark, the land itself shaped the stories people would one day tell. Earth was not passive. It breathed, it shifted, it remembered. And in that remembering, figures took form, not always kind, not always cruel, but necessary. Black Annis belongs to this oldest layer of story, beneath folklore, beneath warning, beneath fear. She rests within the deep human understanding that the earth itself watches. In early belief, certain places were thought to possess awareness: hills, old trees, springs, caves. They were not merely locations, they were thresholds, spaces where the visible world brushed against something older, something unseen. Black Annis was said to inhabit these liminal places, where stone met soil, where root pierced clay, where shadow lingered long after sunset. Her presence marked these spaces as alive, not alive in the way animals are alive, but awake. Many scholars believe her story descends from ancient earth goddesses, figures who ruled over fertility, decay, renewal, and death. These goddesses were not gentle, they were not forgiving, they governed cycles far larger than comfort. To them, growth and rot were equal, birth and death inseparable, light and darkness bound together. Black Annis carries the same balance. She is not simply destruction, she is the necessary return. In older pagan traditions, winter was not feared. It was respected. The dark months were understood as a time of withdrawal, of gathering inward, of allowing the land to sleep. Black Annis may represent this season, the old winter mother, the keeper of long nights, the silent steward of endings. Her hunger becomes symbolic. Not consumption, but transformation. What she takes, she returns to the soil. This is why her lair is beneath the earth. Caves have always been seen as entrances into the womb of the world. Places where stone curves inward, where sound fades, where the air thickens. To enter a cave is to step backward in time, to return, briefly, to something ancient. Black Annis waits there, not as a predator, but as a presence, a reminder that all things eventually return. In rural memory, children were taught to respect these places, not fear them, but acknowledge them. Do not linger, do not disturb, do not wander, because not every space belongs to the living. Some belong to the land itself. The hedgerows of England once formed vast living corridors, thick with bramble, hawthorn, elder, and oak. They separated fields, shielded livestock, sheltered birds and animals, and concealed countless hidden paths. To walk these hedgerows at night was to move through a world entirely different from the open field. Sound softened, vision narrowed, the air cooled. Black Annis was said to move easily within these tangled spaces, flowing through shadow and root, appearing only as suggestion, a ripple in darkness, a shape briefly separating from the black. She did not announce herself. She allowed fear to do the work. Yet fear alone does not sustain legend. Meaning does. And beneath the warnings and whispers, Black Annis carries profound symbolism. She represents the untamed land, the part of nature not shaped by plow, not softened by fence, not illuminated by fire. She is the wild that remains, watching. As agriculture expanded, humans reshaped the countryside. Forests were cleared, fields carved, paths laid. And with this transformation came anxiety. What had once been continuous wilderness became fragmented, and into those fragments, stories flowed. Black Annis gathered herself into the remaining shadows, becoming the guardian of what humans had not yet mastered. In this way, she is not only a monster of folklore, but a witness to change. She watches villages grow. She watches roads straighten. She watches forests retreat, and she remains unmoved. There is comfort in this persistence, in knowing that something ancient endures beyond human ambition, beyond construction, beyond forgetting. Black Annis is not bound to success, or failure, or progress. She belongs to time, and time moves differently beneath the soil. As the centuries turned, new interpretations softened her edges. She became less devourer, more presence, less hunter, more watcher. Her claws grew symbolic, her hunger metaphorical. She no longer consumed children. She gathered wandering thoughts. She collected stray attention. She drew restless minds back toward stillness. In these later interpretations, Black Annis became something almost gentle, not in appearance, but in purpose. She did not punish curiosity. She returned it to quiet. There is a reason she remains most active in twilight, that moment when day dissolves and night gathers. The moment when the world pauses between states. Twilight is not day, it is not night, it is transition. And Black Annis is a creature of transition, even now. Long after the hedgerows have thinned and the old caves sealed, her presence lingers in subtler ways. In the unease that rises when we walk alone at dusk, in the sudden sense of being observed, even when no eyes are near, in the instinct to return home before darkness fully settles. These impulses are ancient. They remember her. Perhaps Black Annis no longer walks the countryside. Perhaps she no longer waits in hollow trees. Perhaps she has folded herself into the spaces between thought and dream, where rest begins, where fear dissolves, where the mind loosens its grip. As you breathe now, slowly, evenly, let the world soften around you. The land does not need to be watched tonight. The roads are quiet, the hedgerows stand still, the hills hold their breath. Nothing moves, nothing waits. And in that stillness, the legend releases you, not with urgency, not with warning, but with calm. As the night stretches onward, the world begins to soften, edges blur, Distance collapses, and the mind loosens its careful grip. What once felt immediate now drifts gently away, like mist rising from warm earth, like breath dissolving into cold air. This is the hour Black Annis knows best. Not the hour of fear, but the hour of quiet, in the deepest countryside. When all lamps are dark, and even the animals have stilled, the land settles into a rhythm older than memory. Wind eases, leaves still, clouds drift without urgency. Nothing hurries. The hills remain, heavy and patient, holding centuries within their layered stone, carrying the weight of untold footsteps and forgotten lives. Beneath them, soil presses gently against root and bone alike, keeping secrets without judgment. Black Annis belongs to this depth, not to movement, not to noise, but to stillness. In the stories, she does not linger on the surface. She does not stride across open ground. She moves within the quiet layers of the world. Through earth, through shadow, through memory, she passes unseen, like the slow turning of seasons, like the shifting of stars. Her presence is felt not in terror, but in calm inevitability. Everything returns, everything rests. Long ago, people learned to listen to this rhythm. When work ceased, when fire dimmed, when voices softened, they allowed the night to carry them inward. They did not fight rest. They welcomed it. Stories like that of Black Annis were spoken gently, slowly, their words drifting like smoke, curling towards sleep, not to frighten, but to remind that darkness is not emptiness, that silence is not absence, that the world continues even when we close our eyes. The land has always understood this. Fields do not resist frost. Trees do not fear winter. They yield, and in yielding, they endure. Black Annis stands as a symbol of that surrender. Not defeat, but trust. Now, as your breathing slows and the night around you grows heavier, let the story become part of that stillness. Let its images blur, let its shapes soften. Nothing needs to be remembered. Nothing needs to be held. The countryside empties, paths fade, hedgerows dissolve into shadow. The hollow oak closes its dark mouth, returning to wood and leaf. Even the hills seem to sink deeper into themselves, as though drifting downward into rest. There is no rider here, no watcher, no waiting presence, only land, only dark, only breath. In the long hours before dawn, the world becomes simple again. Not divided, not complicated, just steady. The slow pulse of time, the quiet turning of earth, the gentle rise and fall of breath. Black Annis does not remain. She never does. She passes, she recedes, and the land closes behind her. This is her final gift, absence, a space where nothing threatens, a quiet where nothing waits, only rest. As sleep deepens, thought loosens further, memories drift, images fade. The mind grows spacious, calm, still. There is nowhere else to go tonight, nothing more to hear, nothing more to follow. Only the steady presence of now, only the comfort of stillness. Only the soft certainty that even the oldest shadows were once shaped to help us rest. Settle in, breathe deep, and let your thoughts drift into the unknown. This has been Fairy Tales After Dark.